Welcome to Journey to Oz, the podcast where we share migration stories from overseas to Australia. We are both registered migration agents. Nick, who specialises in family visas, and myself, Evan, who specialises in employer-sponsored visas. Over the years, we have helped many clients who have very interesting stories to tell. Nick, can you give us an outline of what we will cover in today's episode?
I spoke to Yndra and Dan about their prospective marriage visa application and the hurdles that they had to go through for Yndra to get into Australia. Yndra's from Venezuela and they initially met online and then decided to apply for a prospective marriage visa after Dan went to Venezuela to meet her. Initially, we expected the application to be processed within 12 months, but then COVID hit and it really delayed the process. So we go through the ins and outs of that and the lengths that she had to go to just to get flights to come to Australia as well. After the interview, we'll also discuss the Novak Djokovic visa cancellation and subsequent removal from Australia, and also give some other immigration updates. But first, I started by asking Yndra about her first impressions of Australia.
Well, when I was in quarantine, I had this view of I think it's the Sydney Harbour?
Darling Harbour.
Darling Harbour,
yeah.
Well, that was the name of the hotel. Yeah, I had the view. It was great. At the beginning, there was still lockdown. So everything seemed very quiet. It was very odd. And yeah, I had this great view, but the windows were completely closed. Even though there was like a big window, it's completely closed. So you're like, at a certain point, it just becomes like unreal. Like it's because you're not interacting with the environment at all.
Yeah, okay.
So it was a little bit odd. Like I had like no experience of arriving in Sydney at all, really. The airport was completely empty.
What did you think when you got out of quarantine? Like, what did you think of the place?
That was going to be my question, actually.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. I was like, excuse me, isn't Dan's voice? When I got out of quarantine.
Yeah.
Well, I thought it was very bright. I thought it was very sunny, very bright.
Yeah.
I thought everything looked like really organized and clean. I didn't have too much time to see many things around me because I was just focused on like getting to Toowoomba itself. When I got into Toowoomba, it was bigger than I expected, like geographically.
Okay.
And it has an enormous amount of vegetation. That surprised me too.
And what about the people? What was your impression of the Australian people that you first spoke to? Did you sort of have any trouble understanding anyone or was it pretty straightforward?
Oh, well, when I was in quarantine, I subjected myself to this regimen of watching television. Okay. Like after the third day, I was like, wait, what am I doing? So I started watching television.
Yep.
Like only the Australian channels.
Okay.
Because I thought that would help me to understand people better when I got out.
Yeah.
And I do think it did help, but at the end, it was making me a little bit crazy having the TV all over. And my impressions of people so far, honestly, they're really nice and they're really friendly once they're engaged.
Okay.
But I do feel like when they're doing their errands and things, they're very on task.
Yeah, okay.
They're not really like, oh, I'm just gonna wait to talk with a random stranger and waste my time. Not like they're doing their thing. But once they fix on you, like, oh yeah, I'm talking to this person, they're very nice.
Yeah, okay. So head down, got things to do, don't have time to talk to anyone. But when you're actually formally introduced to someone, they're a lot more friendly and interested. Yes,
like if they themselves are like, no, I'm taking my time to talk with this person or to help this person, then they're really friendly, more than I expected.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. So, Dan, what's it like to finally have Yndra in Australia with you?
Oh, it's pretty surreal. It's really good. It's really good. It's been so long that we were waiting to actually be together, and it's been interesting learning to live with someone, if that makes sense, because it was so long. So actually living with someone again is really strange, but yeah, Yndra is just awesome. It's been really good. Yeah.
Fantastic. And Yndra, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself? Where did you grow up?
Yeah, I grew up in Venezuela, like most of my childhood, my childhood until I was like 13, 14. I was like in a small town called Cuba, like in a different state. And then after that, we moved to another, like a small city where most of my family lived. called Maracay. Like I never lived in the capital city of Caracas.
Okay.
But all of these places are relatively close compared to places in Australia. The distances are way bigger.
Yeah, because I think Venezuela is probably about the same size of maybe New South Wales.
Yeah, like one of the states. Yeah, like Queensland maybe is a bit smaller. And most of the major cities are like around the coast, kind of like in here a little bit.
Yeah.
So so I grew up mostly in Maracay, and Maracay was it wasn't the capital city. It was more like at a certain point it was more like the garden city.
Okay.
So I thought that was funny that I was coming here like to a garden city.
Toowoomba, yeah. Yeah, I didn't think of that.
No, it didn't remind me to the real Maracay, but it reminded me of how I saw Maracay when I was a child. Like I saw it big, green, like parks and that kind of thing. I really liked that.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. And how about yourself, Dan?
Yeah, so I'm from Taree, New South Wales, and I lived all over. Mum and Dad were missionaries, so they travelled overseas a bit and travelled all over Australia doing Pentecostal missionary business. So then, just came to settle in Toowoomba. About this the longest place I've lived in Toowoomba, and I've settled here about probably 12 years ago now. So really liking it. Yeah.
Okay, great. And how did you first meet each other?
So we were both part of this little website called Spin Chat, and it's nothing now than like what it used to be. But for years and years, we've both been on there, but not knowing each other. And then we did meet each other, and I thought she was the business pretty early, and just sort of kept bugging her every time she was online until finally she would be talking to me and stuff. And we just kind of went from there.
Fantastic. And you flew to Venezuela to meet Yndra for the first time in November 2016.
Yeah.
What were your first impressions of Venezuela?
I liked it. I thought it was really great. It's very vibrant culturally. Like it's a different kind of street culture to what we've got here. There's a lot of food and coffee on the sidewalk. Guys walking around with these little things of coffee, and I really thought it was a good place. Pretty steamy, but yeah, it was great.
Yeah. I was going to actually ask you about the food because I've tried arepas that they sell on the street. I not in Venezuela, but I have actually tried them and love it. They're really good. They're like these little
some really good food there.
Corn. What are they? It's like a cornmeal, kind of like a bun with meat and avocado and stuff in it.
Yeah, like it's like a what's the name? Like it's pre-cooked corn meal.
Yeah,
and then they do, and after that they will make the ball. They cook it, and the fillings, like the fillings can be very intense, like you're saying, like with avocado and like old beef and
But that's something that you do with your family, wasn't it? Like hang around and everyone make arepas, and
it is like a very daily life normal sort of thing, like making like a toast. Yeah, people daily will eat them.
Sounds like my kind of toast.
Definitely tasty.
Yeah.
Tasty, yes.
So Dan, how were you welcomed by Yndra's family?
It was great. I was really surprised, like how open they were, and but because this fully grown stranger coming from so far away, they'd only found out about me a little time previous to me actually getting there.
Yeah, I didn't tell them from the beginning because we started talking, and he came almost like a year after we started talking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Something like that. So I didn't tell them from the beginning, but like let's say 3 months before he came, something like that.
Okay.
Something like that. But they were all very lovely, very welcoming, and even though we couldn't speak the same language, we definitely had a lot of conversations just with body language and facial expressions and all that kind of stuff. So they were right into it. Yeah.
My family knew because it was very suspicious how I kept like talking and his voice down and giggling and laughing in English day after day, night after night. So it's more like I came clean 3 months after he came. But they already knew something was up.
And what's your Spanish like, Dan?
Oh, still needs a lot of work. A lot of work.
He knows how to ask for coffee.
Oh, how do you do that? I don't even know how to say that.
On a cafe. On a cafe. Yeah, that's it. Like just.
It's more about the face,
right.
But yeah.
Again, the body
basic survival skills. Asking for coffee.
But coffee over there is an experience. Like over here, it's sort of we got the instant coffee and everything, but over there it's all brewed and it's all like there's people cruising around with these little shooters of coffee and like so you buy them off these random dudes on bicycles.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's just a real like a big part of the culture. So I've really appreciated that.
We don't do instant coffee in Melbourne.
I knew.
Oh, yeah?
I knew you would make offense.
Yeah, no. It must be a Queensland thing.
We're still bogans up here in Queensland.
Oh my God.
No, Melbourne's full of coffee snobs.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Anyway, how did you come to the decision to apply for the prospective marriage visa?
Well, what happened is we started talking. We came eventually to the conclusion that we wanted to be together. But of course, that would require us being together in person, of course. So then we started like looking into possibilities for being together in person.
Yeah.
And we thought that it was a little bit difficult for me to get maybe like a tourist visa and stuff like that. Like it could potentially be not successful.
Yeah.
Because of reasons with the country and things like that.
Yeah. Yep.
Also, it would have been good for Dan to come. Like I did want Dan to come and meet my family. Like it did mean a lot to me that they met. So yeah, but because we saw like the difficulty in a way of the tourist visa, like getting the tourist visa.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Like we already wanted something permanent.
Yeah. Okay.
So it was the only option, really.
Of course, if we met and everything blew up, of course not. But like at the time, we were like, well, if everything is going as amazing as it's going, like if we feel like how we're feeling, we want to be permanent together. So then we started looking into like the possibilities of how to go there.
Yeah, with regards to the visitor visa, it's quite common for people to apply for a visitor visa and have multiple refusals before deciding to apply for a prospective marriage visa. Because the other option is partner visa. But really, for a partner visa, you either have to already be married or have lived together for 12 months to apply for the partner visa in most cases. So prospective marriage visa is a good option because you actually only have to have physically met in person once and be engaged and have a marriage date and also convince the Department of Home Affairs that you intend on living together as a married couple. So a prospective marriage visa is a good option. Now, when did you get engaged?
Well, Nick, when I was there, I actually proposed to I proposed, but I also asked her parents for permission.
Yeah, okay.
When I was there, I asked the parents for permission and did the whole thing.
How did that go?
It was really something. I was very humbled. They took it really well.
He was really nervous.
I was very nervous.
Did Yndra have to translate for you?
Absolutely. Everything was translated, yeah. So,
but even when you asked for permission, Yndra was there translating.
Yeah, it was outside of my body.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. So it was a real different kind of experience in that regard. Yeah. But no, they were really happy because we went somewhere in like this German town, which is a touristy sort of place. So we had some time together there.
Okay.
And before we went to that place, I thought, I'd better say my intentions, not just cruising off for a holiday with their daughter. I didn't want to get in trouble or anything. So fair enough. But that was what we were wanting to do anyway.
Because at the time it was a bit it was kind of unsafe, and I was worried about Dan potentially being targeted or something like that.
Oh yeah, okay.
Because he did look very foreign
for being a gringo. I think that's what they call us down. I think we get called gringos.
Everyone.
They're mostly Americans, but we still get lumped.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
He was being called blondie in the street by random guy. Right. And he was like, I'm brunette. I was like, I'm sorry, you're blondie here. You're blonde here. So because because of that, we went to this Colonia Tovar, which is like a German town, like a touristic sort of place, which is kind of small. It's more like secluded, and a lot of people go there for mini vacations, like weekend getaways. And I liked that idea because then we could walk more. We were just like walking around.
We were together, so we could see something of what life together might be.
Yeah, okay.
Like sort of, because that's something that we couldn't determine over the online.
Yeah, we were like just walking around normally, like to the streets, like very relaxed.
Yeah.
Which I don't know in the city, like if I could, because I felt very responsible of if anyone targeted him for being like a gringo, looking like that and stuff.
Yeah.
Like I was very, I was taking very seriously to try nothing to happen to him. Like I had all of these ideas, like what if they kidnap his passport or something? Or, I didn't want anything like that. So we went there. So it was weird because we went to Venezuela, but it was like a Germantown thingy.
Yeah.
It worked, yeah.
Oh, still, it was a Germantown, Venezuelan thingy. And it was lovely.
That's great.
Very nice. How long were you in Venezuela for, Dan?
3 weeks.
Okay. And was there ever a point where you considered relocating to Venezuela permanently?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I really loved it when I was there.
Yeah.
One thing that was really noticeable was the shortage of different things. So because of my health situation, I've got mental health issues, being bipolar, and a couple of like anxiety and depression and just that kind of fun stuff.
Yeah.
I'm rather reliant on medication, and those medications wouldn't have been available in Venezuela so easily. So
right, okay.
That kind of ruled out staying there.
Like at the time he went, it was very noticeable. Like I remember I went to, like, so you see how weird it was. Like we went to Colonia Tovar and I saw Coke again, which I hadn't seen like in months. And I just got crazy because I finally saw like branded Coca-Cola again.
Oh, Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
Coca-Cola.
So shortage of sort of necessities.
There was like a big shortage of tons of things, like especially like
sugar.
Yeah, like sugar, milk, like all of these things. It was really medicines for sure.
Yeah, okay.
That's just to point out how short those things were.
And I think it was a little bit weird for them.
Oh, it wasn't weird. I thought it was an adventure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was a big adventure. I was happy. But
But yeah,
as
they were
far
empty
as
shelves.
being able to live there, just because of the medications, really. I would have done it otherwise.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. So you made the decision for Yndra to relocate to Australia. How did your family react when you told them that you'd be leaving Venezuela, Yndra?
They were happy for me, honestly.
Yeah.
Like they were happy that I found Dan. Yeah, they were mostly focusing on that aspect. They didn't really mention too much about like being so far away.
Yeah.
They thought that I was there to take her with me, like to pick her up just then and take her back with me.
Okay.
So that was actually their understanding.
We get to have her for another year or two.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were a bit shocked, but they were happy that I found someone. Like it was important. Like they were very fixed in the idea that I found my love story.
Yeah. Okay.
They were really into that.
So we lodged your prospective marriage visa application in May 2019. Now, at the time, we expected that it would be processed within about 12 months, something like that, because at that time, that's how long they were taking. Now, when did you initially plan to get married?
So we were thinking of like sort of early 2020.
Right, okay.
Originally. Like just depending on when it was approved, but maybe sort of like early to mid 2020 was maybe possible, or like if we were lucky with the processing. Didn't happen that way though.
Yeah, that's right. So then the pandemic hits, of course, in March 2020, and the Australian border closed for all temporary visa holders, including prospective marriage visa holders, but not partner visa holders, interestingly enough. But prospective marriage visa holders were barred from entering Australia. So it meant that even if Yndra, your visa was granted, you wouldn't be able to enter Australia on that visa.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts at this point?
Well, it was extremely hard knowing that. Like I felt I had like this series of obstacles, one after the other.
Yeah.
Like first I had to be granted, and when would that happen? And then after that, I couldn't even get in. Yeah, like it was really difficult in that time. And the waiting also.
Yeah, definitely. So, Dan, how did you handle being in a long-distance relationship for longer than you expected?
I was okay. I'm convinced that I found my person, so
Yeah.
I was just happy, you know. If it was going to take longer, then it just did, and we were both pretty well of that opinion.
Yeah.
So it was just, you know, keep waiting, keep going. But I think the biggest trick, actually, maybe this is an edit, I'm not sure, but abstinence, like being comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Being comfortable with the idea of, you know, like, so we didn't get in any freaky online stuff. We just were comfortable with waiting for each other.
Yeah, okay.
That really helped.
So we received a request for more information in October 2020 asking Yndra to do a health assessment. Did you have any challenges doing the health assessment, Yndra?
No, I didn't have any challenges.
So did you have to do a phone interview then?
Yes, they called me, and then we had I had a phone interview, and at the time it was really difficult because there were, Venezuelans would know, there was I didn't have good internet in the house at the time.
Oh, okay.
There were at that time there were a lot of electrical outages. So I was very nervous that it would happen when I wouldn't have internet, that the electrical outages, how it would affect me. So I ended up giving them the number of one of my aunts. So I went there to call. It was a landline. I didn't have a landline because of kind of youth street, I don't know, some random street crime situation. They just cut it off. So then I went there and I had the interview. They asked for a long time, for an hour.
Right, okay. I think the case officer was based in Chile, calling you from Santiago.
Yes, they were calling from Santiago, and I was very embarrassed because I didn't really understand the accent from Chile,
right.
even though it was Spanish, but I didn't want to admit it.
And what sort of questions did they ask you?
They asked questions about my family, about Dan's family, when we met. They were very incisive, asking why didn't we visit again after the first visit? That stood out to them. That it had been, because it had been a while, right? After he visited, we took a while to lodge it.
So what happened? I had a medical issue that basically took me out for 18 months. So it was a pretty serious medical incident, and so we had to wait to get through that and then lodge. That's why it became May 19 when it did.
Oh, that's what delayed it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they
felt it was suspicious.
They thought that was suspicious. Yeah.
Did you explain that to them, though, Yndra, that Dan had medical problems and that was why there was such a delay?
Yeah, I was very nervous, but I tried to explain the best that I could. Try to draw them a timeline of the events, saying, he came here at this time, then he left at so-and-so month. We were planning to do this, but then this happened in February, then from February to so-and-so, explaining also how the electrical outages and all of that had affected me with the working and all of that, and then recovering from the situation. I did this very long timeline of events, trying to explain about this gap, that what they felt was a suspicious gap.
It worked.
Yeah, yeah. You must have done well. And Dan, were you ever contacted for an interview?
No, not at all. No.
Okay.
Not once.
He wanted to be.
I was hoping to be. I was hoping to be, but no.
Well, I was very excited
to do the interview.
Yeah, we thought they would grant soon.
Exactly. I thought that because we got this interview, and they said in the interview that, it was in certain stages and so and so, we became very excited because we thought it was nearing the end, that if they were doing this interview, they were just going to request for the medicals and things like that, and it will be some months, and then it will be granted. But that is not what happened. So, there was a lot of waiting after that.
Was the interview before the pandemic hit?
It was, yep.
Yes.
It's pretty early on in the process.
Yeah, it was pretty early on, like 4 or 5 months later or something.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So it's quite a good possibility that it would have been granted in 2020 at some point had the pandemic not hit. Anyway, we don't want to sort of dwell on that too much. So we received another request for more information in March 2021 asking for an updated police clearance and an updated letter from your marriage celebrants. So how many times did you end up having to change your wedding date?
3 different times.
Wow.
We've got a lovely celebrant, though. She's really great. So she didn't.
Yeah. So then finally, just over 2 years after the application was lodged, it was granted in May 2021. However, Yndra, you still couldn't enter Australia because you didn't have an exemption. How bittersweet was that?
Very much so. It was
frustrating.
I don't remember exactly like the order of events, but I remember it was really tough for me because my passport, it used to be, I don't know right now, but it used to be so hard to get like a passport.
Yeah.
In Venezuela, like it would take ages and then it wouldn't come. Like it was a whole thing. So then I was really tense about the passport expiring, and the passport did expire during the wait. So then I was like very tense just before they did that, because it was like the passport was expired, what I was going to do. So I had to get like a passport extension or something.
Yeah.
Would I get it? I had to be granted the visa. Would I be granted at some point soon? And I knew that even if I was granted, then I will need like an exemption. So I was like, oh my God, I have like these layers and layers of like mini obstacles. And it was really stressful knowing that.
Yeah, we did discuss lodging an exemption on compelling and compassionate grounds due to Dan's mental health. But then in August 2021, the Department of Home Affairs started granting exemptions to prospective marriage visa holders who had lodged their application at least 12 months prior. And we applied for that and it was granted within a few days. How much of a relief was that?
That was amazing. That was really something. And we just like to pass our thanks on to all those people who rallied so hard for those changes, because there was a lot of people put in a lot of hours to make those come about.
Yes.
It was great.
The argument was that, you know, a partner visa applicant pays the same fee as a prospective marriage visa applicant, but a partner visa holder is automatically exempt, whereas a prospective marriage visa holder wasn't.
That's right. So they determined it was a real and ongoing relationship, but they weren't giving us the same consideration.
Yeah.
As someone in the other position. Yeah, but thankfully, and thankfully for all the people coming through now, that's all changed. That's excellent. That's really great.
Yeah, well, prospective marriage visa holders are automatically exempt.
Ah, wonderful.
Pretty much all temporary visa holders are, except for visitor visas from everywhere other than Singapore, Korea, and Japan. Yeah, everywhere. All other visitor visas holders still need an exemption. So whether that be on the basis of family connections, employment, compelling and compassionate reasons, there's a number of different exemption categories.
Right. It's a complicated thing.
Yeah, it is. That's right. Yeah. So then I referred you to a travel agent friend of mine who did the very best he could at the time, but he couldn't find anything under around about $14,000 one way from Caracas to Sydney. So Yndra, how did you end up getting to Australia?
So we were worried about getting out of there because actually the flights exiting Venezuela were a bit limited. And at the time, we didn't see, actually, I believe that the routes directly to Australia were very few because of the situation. And this also led to the huge
ticket costs.
Yeah, the huge ticket costs.
Yeah. So what it was is because there was a limit on how many people could enter Australia at a time. So therefore, there was a limit to how many people could go on each flight. And so there was flights operating with, say, 20 people when normally they'd probably have over 200. So therefore the flights were being like, they were probably 10 times as much as what they normally would be.
Just to cover it, yeah.
And South America, even pre-pandemic, it's not the easiest place to fly to Australia from.
Yes, indeed. So because of that, the flights were extremely expensive, like 7,000, 10,000. Like I read about it online, people talking about it.
Yeah.
And also there weren't like direct routes from South America, because there used to be like a route via Chile or Argentina, I believe.
Yeah. Both at one point.
Yeah. Before, like time ago, that's what we thought would be the natural route to get there.
Okay.
Because as a Venezuelan, I didn't have, like, Dan came through transiting through the USA.
Yeah.
But like as a Venezuelan, you don't really have like that visa. You will have to apply for it and be granted. And it's a bit more difficult. Like it's not easy to get it. So I didn't have that. So I couldn't go through the USA with those routes. And then since the South American ones weren't happening, we started thinking, oh, well, maybe it could be through Europe, like going through Spain, going through this other thing. Then eventually we saw like this DFAT, they were mentioning the DFAT flights, and we became very excited. We managed to get one of the DFAT tickets. We were trying to prepare for anything, but we didn't know that Argentina had like a similar restriction, sort of like Australia.
Okay.
We generated also like the plane, but it was a bit different. It was like the government released certain flights that were allowed to enter into the country, but the airlines sold the tickets before they knew that. So then if you weren't on the lucky day, you will be canceled, which is what happened to us.
How many times was your ticket cancelled or your flight cancelled?
It was just that time because we wanted like
just the one.
Okay.
Because we were trying to make it for the DFAT flight. The DFAT flight was going to depart from Argentina, and a lot of people were really mad because they were saying that why was it departing from Argentina and not Chile?
Okay.
Because Chile didn't have like that restriction like that. Anyway, we tried I tried really hard to make it happen and to change it and everything, but it couldn't happen. And many people were in the same situation across South America, like many Australians that are in South America, because the DFAT flights are for that. And well, that didn't happen. But luckily, like a few days later, we saw again the ladies of X Travel. They posted again about their charter flight, which didn't seem so expensive. Now, the second time that we saw it, seeing everything about the current prices, the DFAT fiasco situation. And then we contacted with them, and that will be the flight that will ultimately take me here, like the X Travel latest charter flight from Chile.
Okay. And did you take a separate flight from Caracas to Santiago then?
They fixed the entire route for me.
Okay.
And from Venezuela at the time, you couldn't do like direct flights to Chile or to Colombia. So it had to go through Panama. So they checked a flight from Caracas. Well, not from Caracas. I actually departed from Valencia, like a smaller airport, which I felt more comfortable in because that was like my first flight ever.
First time on a plane.
So,
wow.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was very nerve-wracking because I just assumed it wouldn't work out, that they will stop me, that they will find. That's why I was also like intimidated about doing it through Caracas. Yeah, because I hadn't done it before. It's a very small airport, but people, I don't know right now how it is with the measures, but yeah, at the time, it made sense to go then to Panama. So the routes that they put was like one flight from Caracas to Panama, and Panama to Colombia, because in Panama, I could only transit. Then I stayed overnight in Colombia. Then there was like the other leg, like a different ticket altogether. So I had to make it to the flight in Colombia, right? Then it was from Colombia to Chile, where I had to transit. I think in Chile, it was like a 24-hour transit for me, for Venezuelans. So from Colombia to Chile, and then in Chile, we took the charter flight, which like with LATAM.
Okay.
So it was like to Chile to Sydney.
Yeah, okay. And then 2 weeks in quarantine and then to Toowoomba.
Yeah.
Yes, and then in Sydney, we arrived. The airport was deserted. They took us on a bus to like our hotel. I think it's Novotel in Sydney Harbour.
Okay.
It was great. I really liked it. I mean, if I forgot I was there, I wouldn't have rather been there first. But it was a really good stay. Like it was a good hotel. Like they gave us good food every day. They tried to do like Zoom meetings and things like that for people to entertain.
Yeah, keep up morale.
Yeah, or between the guests of the hotel.
They tried to make the good out of it, like the best they could out of it, which I really appreciate, and I really remember them for that.
Yeah, okay.
And initially I was like in a room that had the phone didn't work.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and then they had to change me. And that's how I got the room with the view.
Yeah, nice. Nice.
It was a great view. But at the end I was a bit like cabin fever. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like it really got to me because you can open the door. You don't have any windows open.
I can imagine that would drive me crazy.
Like, oh my God, like I'm in a bubble.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like eventually it gets to you. But they were really nice.
Excellent. So the Department of Home Affairs changed the marriage requirement on the prospective marriage visa from 9 months from grant to 15 months from grant. So based off when your visa was granted, it means you've got until August 2022 to get married and apply for a partner visa. What date are you planning on getting married now?
So our current notice of intent to marry says the 14th, was it the 15th maybe?
February?
Okay.
February. But we're thinking of putting it back a few months just to get things in order for the next visa.
Yeah, fair enough.
Just to make it easier for everything to flow together. Yeah, so... But currently it's 15th of February, which is just around the corner, really. It's not far at all.
It's, 5 weeks from now, from the
weeks?
date of recording.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, because like our notice of intended marriage, like we said, which we had to change the date 3 times.
Yeah.
And you have to get like a date that you would think you will be there already, but that would also give you time to prepare everything. And we had no idea. Like we hadn't been granted yet. We didn't know when we would be granted, when I will be here. We tried to calculate and we came to that date. But now that we're here, maybe we will delay it a little bit now knowing that. Although we do want to make it sooner rather than later.
It's always a bit of a question for a prospective marriage visa because you have to get married within 15 months of when the visa is granted, but you don't know when the visa is going to be granted. So you sort of have to just estimate a date and then tell the celebrant that you need some flexibility with them.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So beyond marriage, what are your plans for the future together?
Beyond marriage, well, we just plan to just get more settled in and try new things. We would like to see a bit of Australia if possible.
Okay.
Absolutely.
We'll see how it goes, like with the restrictions and stuff between states. That would be amazing. And just try new things. Just finally, like after waiting so long, it's almost like confusing that it finally has happened.
Just getting to hang out around the house is pretty awesome at this point. So, we'll venture out when the states open up and see some sights. And we're not planning on having kids, so we'll just enjoy life. Really, that's the main thing.
Fantastic. And Yndra, do you plan on eventually applying for Australian citizenship?
Yeah, because Dan and I would like to have maybe we think maybe it would be good to have the same passport, the same things for future travels or things like that. And the truth is I do plan to stay permanently. Yeah. So it will make sense.
Yeah. I think having an Australian passport does make it a lot easier to travel because there's a lot more countries where you don't need visas for them. Yeah.
We will have the same requirements, right, for visas and transits and things like that instead of how it is now.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Unless you still have a Venezuelan passport and you travel on that, but I think certain countries it might be easier for Venezuela if you're on a Venezuelan passport, maybe in South America, but certainly like Europe and countries in Asia, and it's easier to travel on an Australian passport.
Yeah.
And you should be eligible for Australian citizenship in around about 3.5 years.
Right. Okay.
It just depends on how long it takes for the permanent visa to be granted. So the next step is to apply for the partner visa once you're married. And then 2 years after that application's been lodged, stage 2 of the partner visa application gets lodged. And then it might take another 6 to 12 months for the second stage to process. And then once that visa is granted, that's when you become a permanent resident. And then you should be eligible for citizenship 12 months from that date, as long as you've been in Australia for 4 years in total.
So it's 4 years or after this process, whichever's going to happen first. Hey, that's fantastic.
So as long as you've been in Australia for 4 years in total.
I see. From arrival, from now?
Correct. Yep.
Like those now count for the 4 years?
It does, yeah. The time on the prospective marriage visa counts towards the 4 years.
I see.
That's awesome.
Well, thanks for joining us today, Dan and Yndra. Like, you've had a really sort of long-winded story with, delays in lodging the prospective marriage visa application in the first place, and then COVID hitting, and then the visa being granted but still not being able to get into Australia because not having an exemption, and then the issues with the flights and the journey from Panama to Colombia to Chile and then to Australia. But really appreciate your time today, and thanks for joining us on the Journey to Oz podcast.
Thanks to you.
Very welcome, Nick. Thanks for being a great agent. You did really well, mate.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. Thanks for your work.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking the time, Nick, to share Yndra and Dan's story. I love with them about how Dan had to ask her parents for permission, to marry Yndra, but all those communication barriers. But then the fact that, they thought that Dan was going to be taking Yndra back to Australia in that trip itself. So they had a nice surprise when she got to stick around for a lot longer.
Yeah, it ended up being almost 3 years instead of 1.
And that's the thing. I mean, these prospective marriage visas have been around for a long time. They're not necessarily new as much as they might be a new concept to some of our listeners. But what are the interesting variables in this is aspects like hotel quarantine, delayed processing times, the fact that in the past it could have been such a quicker process, but they weren't an exempt person to allow Yndra to come to Australia for such a time. And there was the talk, as I said, about the efforts people put in place to have that change come about. So I think it was an absolutely fantastic story. And to be honest, I have had a lot of clients which have gone through hotel quarantine, and it sounds like a horrible thing to go to, but I always find these stories really fascinating, and everyone's, 2 weeks in a hotel is very unique as well.
Yeah, for sure. The other thing that they did was they changed the time by which a couple had to get married before applying for a partner visa. So it was originally 9 months, and they changed it to 15 months because of the pandemic. So it'll be interesting to see whether they change that back or not. I suspect they probably just leave it as it is, but who knows? They may change it back as well.
You'd like to hope, because 9 months used to sound like such a long time, but I know a lot of people which they've gone to get married, 4 or 5 times with rescheduling over the past few years because of just, nothing to do with migration, just various lockdowns, density limits
sure.
with restrictions and social distancing. So I think hopefully the change of extending 9 months to be 15 months to go from, being a prospective marriage, actually getting married. Hopefully that process is one that will stick around.
Yeah, definitely. So as of mid-December, prospective marriage visa holders can now enter Australia without needing an exemption, as long as they're double vaccinated. They don't need to quarantine, depending on the state. So this is good. We've actually now seen more people starting to inquire about prospective marriage visas again, and currently going through the process with a couple of different clients. So if you're interested in applying for a prospective marriage visa, feel free to visit hansenmigration.com.au. That's HANSEN migration.com.au, and click the free consultation button to book a consultation.
Now, as an immigration podcast, it would be remiss of us not to address the recent Novak Djokovic visa cancellation saga.
Yeah, so just to give some background, early in the pandemic, he made some comments about being opposed to being vaccinated in order to travel. In June 2020, as Europe was mostly in lockdown and there were no sporting events, he organised his own tennis tournament and invited several top European players. They didn't follow any COVID protocols and it ended up being a super spreader event where he himself tested positive for COVID. So he was granted a subclass 408 temporary activity visa in November 2021. He then contracted COVID in mid-December 2021 and attended several public events after that. He was granted a vaccination exemption to enter Victoria on the basis that he had tested positive for COVID within the prior 6 months. He then arrived in Australia on late 5th of January and was then taken into questioning regarding his vaccination status. His visa was cancelled on the basis that he might be a risk to the health, safety, or good order of the Australian community or a segment of the Australian community. He was then placed into immigration detention pending removal from Australia. The decision to cancel his visa was overturned by the Federal Circuit Court on the 10th of January on the grounds that he was denied procedural fairness. Then 4 days later, Immigration Minister Alex Hawke cancelled his visa again on the grounds that he's a high-profile unvaccinated person who has a history of flaunting COVID rules and that his presence in Australia may be counterproductive to efforts at vaccination by others in Australia, which may be a risk to the health of the community of Australia. On the 16th of January, the 3 judges of the Federal Court upheld the decision to cancel his visa and he was removed from Australia shortly after. He was ordered to pay all of the court costs. Evan, what are your thoughts on the visa cancellation?
It's certainly a topic which is polarizing, and what I want to comment on is the matter of consideration it was given. Instead of being on the next flight home, Novak was allowed an extension of time, and of course, because he is a tennis player needing to play at a certain date, otherwise the whole trip has been unfruitful, but was allowed an extension of time, hence he was in immigration detention, and I feel he was very fortunate, a combination probably of the fame, the money at his dispense as well, but also the media ruckus around it all, which would have assisted having a full bench of 3 justices arranged for the full court hearing, not only on such short notice, but also on a Sunday. How about your thoughts, Nick?
So I'll preface this by saying I'm not a big Novak fan, and I couldn't care less whether he plays in the Australian Open or not. I'm also pro-vaccination, but I don't agree with this decision. On one hand, an overwhelming majority of Australians were in favour of the visa cancellation decision, according to newspaper polls and social media. So some might say that it was the right decision because of that. But that's just the point. Approximately 80% of Australians have been double vaccinated and over 30% have received the 3rd booster shot. So the idea that a tennis player who was travelling to Australia to play in a tennis tournament is suddenly going to affect the vaccine rollout is absurd. If he was travelling to Australia specifically to hold anti-vax rallies, then that would be a different story. We've seen cancellations like this in the past. For example, far-right British commentator Katie Hopkins, who was supposed to appear on Australian Big Brother, she had her visa cancelled after boasting about flouting infection controls whilst in quarantine in Sydney. There's also been a couple of US pickup artists who were supposed to be travelling to Australia to do a series of seminars that promoted abusive behaviour towards women. Both of them had their visas cancelled. But at the end of the day, Novak was here to play in a tennis tournament and was not even consulted by Alex Hawke as to his current views on vaccination before his visa was cancelled. Most of Novak's anti-vax comments that Hawke refers to in the cancellation were made before his visa was granted. So why didn't they just refuse to grant him a visa in the first place? Instead, it's turned into a massive saga that is quite frankly an embarrassment to the Australian government.
And it's also been embarrassing being practitioners in this field that Nick and I are. I've seen how it's been reported as well. We need to mention that Novak Djokovic wasn't deported from Australia, as widely reported by the media. He was removed from Australia. Deportation and removal may sound similar, but they're quite different. Only serious criminals and persons who are at risk to national security get deported from Australia. Regular persons who are illegally in Australia, maybe overstayed their visa or had their visa cancelled, are removed from Australia. So that's the difference between deportation and removed. Deportation requires a specific deportation order leading to an arrest, whereas removal does not. Persons who have been deported from Australia will find it very difficult to ever return to Australia, and in some cases may never return. Whereas persons who are removed will just face a 1-year ban on returning to Australia unless there's compelling or compassionate circumstances.
So any person who leaves Australia whilst unlawful or whilst holding a bridging visa C, D or E is subject to a 3-year ban on returning to Australia on certain types of visas, which in the case of Djokovic includes the subclass 408 temporary visa. So there's the 1-year ban on any type of visa for being removed, but then there's also the 3-year ban for not holding the right type of visa or any type of visa whilst leaving Australia. So as far as I'm aware, the 3-year ban doesn't apply to any permanent visas. For example, I had a client who overstayed a visa by 10 years, left Australia, applied for an offshore partner visa, and then returned to Australia within 12 months and is now a permanent resident. Either way, the person being removed or deported from Australia must pay the costs, which can be substantial.
So Novak Djokovic is now subject to a 3-year ban on returning to Australia on a temporary visa. So his lawyers will need to argue that either compelling and compassionate circumstances that affect the interest of Australia or compassionate and compelling circumstances that affect the interest of an Australian citizen, Australian permanent resident, or an eligible New Zealand citizen, justifying the grant of the visa within 3 years after the departure.
I think that he should probably have a fairly good chance of getting a waiver on the basis of compelling circumstances that affect the interest of Australia, especially if he's still the number 1 tennis player in the world.
This time next year, yeah.
Yep, correct. Yeah. So moving on from Djokovic, we should also touch on the bridging visa B situation where holders are not automatically exempt from entering Australia. In December, the Australian government announced that most temporary visa holders would automatically be exempt from the border restrictions. This did not include bridging visa B holders, which I think is a mistake. So I read an article today about a British woman who applied for a working holiday visa onshore and was holding a bridging visa A. She then applied for a bridging visa B to travel to the UK to attend her brother-in-law's funeral. She was then not granted an exemption to return to Australia on compelling and compassionate grounds. The Australian government are meanwhile refunding student visa and working holiday visa application fees in an effort to encourage young people to travel to Australia and work. This is just given the increasing number of COVID cases and labour shortages in the workforce. In this instance, the woman held a working holiday visa before she left for the UK, and she's applied for another working holiday visa, which should probably be granted if she meets the requirements. And she also has work rights whilst on the bridging visa. So it's quite ridiculous that she's not automatically exempt from the border restrictions. So the way I see it, it's yet another own goal by the Australian government when it comes to handling the pandemic.
Although now onto some good news, the Immigration Minister Alex Hawke recently announced that Australia will prioritise more than 15,000 Afghan refugees through its humanitarian and family reunion programs over the next 4 years.
Yeah, this is good news. We discussed this in episode 5, and there's several advocate groups that are calling for more places for Afghan refugees. So yeah, it's good to see some movement has been made there.
Thanks for listening to the Journey to Oz podcast. If you've liked what you've heard, please subscribe and also leave us a review. We release a new episode every second Tuesday, so stay tuned.
The Journey to Oz podcast is produced by Nick Hansen from Hansen Migration, Migration Agent Registration number 1679147, and Evan Bishop from Worldly Migration, Migration Agent Registration number 1679414. Any information discussed in this podcast is made available for entertainment purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for professional advice. We do not make any guarantee or accept any responsibility for the accuracy and completeness of any of the information discussed. You should obtain advice from a registered migration agent or an immigration lawyer before acting on any of the content discussed in this podcast. You can find a list of registered migration agents by visiting mara.gov.au. The information contained within this podcast may not be reproduced without our prior written consent. In the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge the traditional custodians of land throughout Australia and pay respects to their elders. We extend that respect to all Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islanders today. Thank you for listening.